Bombshell, FBI whistleblower comes forward, confirms it was all a setup, by Amy Moreno for TruthFeedNews.com. Investigative reporter Sarah Carter has unearthed a bombshell. A DoD whistleblower has come forward with information on a key FBI informant in the Russia probe, which proves this was all a setup. The FBI informant appears to have significant ties to Russia. By Sarah Carter, Adam Lovinger, a former Defense Department analyst, never expected that what he stumbled on during his final months at the Pentagon would expose an integral player in the FBI's handling of President Donald Trump's campaign and alleged Russia collusion. Lovinger, a whistleblower, is now battling to save his career. The Pentagon suspended his top-secret security clearance on May 1st, 2017, when he exposed through an internal review that Stefan Halper, who was an Emirates Cambridge professor, had received roughly $1 million in taxpayer-funded money to write Defense Department foreign policy reports, his attorney Sean Bigley said. Before Lovinger's clearance was suspended, he had taken a detail to the National Security Council as Senior Director for Strategy. He was only there for 5 months before he was recalled to the Pentagon, stripped of his prestigious White House detail, and ordered to perform bureaucratic make work in a Pentagon annex Bigley calls the land of misfit toys. His security clearance was eventually revoked in March of 2018, despite the Pentagon refusing to turn over a single page of its purported evidence of Lovinger's wrongdoing, Bigley stated. Conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch recently filed a federal lawsuit against the Defense Department to obtain the withheld records. Lovinger also raised concerns about Halper's role in conducting what appeared to be diplomatic meetings with foreigners on behalf of the U.S. government because his role as a contractor forbids him from doing so according to U.S. federal law. An investigation by SarahACarter.com reveals that the documents and information Lovinger stumbled on and other documents obtained by this new site raised troubling questions about Halper, who was believed to have worked with the CIA and part of the matrix of players in the Bureau's Crossfire Hurricane investigation into Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Halper, who assisted the FBI in the Russia investigation, appears to also have significant ties to the Russian government, as well as sources connected directly to President Vladimir Putin. Halper did not respond to requests for comment. When Mr. Lovinger raised concerns about DoD's misuse of Stefan Halper in 2016, he did so without any political design or knowledge of Mr. Halper's spying activities, Bigley told SarahACarter.com. Instead, Lovinger simply did what all Americans should expect of our civil servants. He reported violations of law and a gross waste of public funds to his superiors. And for that, Bigley said, Lovinger has paid the ultimate price in his 12-year career as a strategist in the Pentagon's Office of Net Assessments. According to Bigley, shortly after Lovinger began reporting and asking questions about suspicious contracts given to Halper and others, including one person closely associated with Chelsea Clinton, his security clearance was suspended. Yeah, you're getting too close to the swamp. Later on, in April 3rd of 2018, the DoD's Washington headquarters services directed Barbara Westgate sent a letter to Lovinger indefinitely suspending him from duty and pay status after his clearance was removed in March. The letter stated, "The purpose of this memorandum is to notify you that I am proposing to indefinitely suspend you from duty and pay status in your position as a foreign affairs specialist." Well, Lovinger, who is married with 3 children and is the family's primary breadwinner, has been living off the generosity of family members since his pay was removed. I'd like to know who suspended his security clearance. Who suspended it? Because this happened, his security clearance was done in 2017. Okay? So, anyway, the retaliation from whistleblowing was something bigly expected. So we weren't surprised when the DoD bureaucrats moved shortly thereafter to strip Mr. Lovinger of both his security clearance and his detail to National Security Council, where he had been Senior Director for Strategy, as a by-name request of the incoming Trump administration, said the attorney. So this was all a ploy. This guy ratted them out. They didn't like it. So the swamp took him out. Yet we were puzzled by the unprecedented ferocity of efforts to discredit Mr. Lovinger, including leaks from the DoD of false and defamatory information to the press, he said. Our assumption was that the other contractor about whom Mr. Lovinger explicitly raised concerns, a close confidant of Hillary Clinton, was the reason for the sustained assault on Mr. Lovinger, and that certainly may have played a role. Yeah, they think they own the government, the Clintons. They think they own everything. We're just nothing to them. The government is theirs. You see what's going on here? That's why they're trying to take out Trump. They're saying, who's this guy? We're in charge, not Trump. You see? Bigley suspects it was more than the Clinton-connected contracts, adding Mr. Lovinger unwittingly shined a spotlight on the deep state secret weapon, Stefan Halper, and threatened to expose the truth about the Trump-Russia collusion narrative that was being plotted, that it was all a setup. That's why. And so they took away his pay, and in order to scare the other people, if they come out and rat on the Clintons, you're not getting paid, your security clearance is going to be stripped automatically without question. And that's the bottom line. They're the head honchos here. Halper has had a long career and worked in government with several GOP administrations. At 73, wow. The elusive professor spent a career developing top-level government connections, not just through academia, but also through his work with members of the intelligence apparatus. Those contacts and the information Halper collected along the way, eventually through apparent circumstance, become utilized by the FBI against the Trump campaign. But it was during his time hosting the Cambridge Intelligence Seminar at the University of Cambridge, where Halper shifted from a professor and former government consultant to FBI informant on the Trump campaign. In 2016, Halper was an integral part of the FBI's investigation into short-term Trump campaign volunteer Carter Page. Carter Page was a plant. We know it. Halper first made contact with Page at his seminar in July of 2016. Page, who was already on the FBI's radar, was accused of being sympathetic to Russia and sought better relations between the U.S. and Russian officials. Halper stayed in contact with Page until September of 2017. That was Carter Page's job. You see? That was his job to do this. Come on now, we're not stupid. During that time, the FBI sought and obtained a warrant from the Foreign Intelligence, a FIS court, to spy on Page and used Halper to collect information on him, according to sources. The House Intelligence Committee Russia report and documents obtained by this outlet relevant that the bulk of the warrant against Page relied heavily on an unverified dossier compiled by former British spy Christopher Steele. And the matter is still under congressional investigation, meanwhile costing us a fortune. Steele, who was a former MI6 agent, also had ties to many of the same people, like former MI6 chief Sir Richard Dearlove, who were part of the seminar. Halper, along with Dearlove, left the Cambridge Intelligence Seminar in December of 2016, saying they were concerned about Russian influence. Halper had told reporters at the time that it was due to unacceptable Russian influence. Ironically, documents obtained by SarahACarter.com suggest that Halper also had invited senior Russian intelligence officials to Kotek his course on several occasions, and according to news reports, also accepted money to finance the course from a top Russian oligarch with ties to Putin. Yeah, like in other words, we can play with the Russians, but you can't. How about that? Several course syllabi for the from 2012 to 2015 obtained by this outlet reveal Halper had invited and co-taught his course on intelligence with former Director of Russian Intelligence General Vladimir I. Trubnikov. On May 4, 2012, the course syllabus states Ambassador Vladimir Trubnikov, whatever, will comment on the challenges faced while directing the Foreign Intelligence Service, his tenure as ambassador to India, President Putin, and the likely course of Russia's relations with Britain and the U.S. In May of 2015, Trubnikov returned to teach with Halper at his seminar in Cambridge on current relations between the Russian Federation and the West. Other notable intelligence experts attended the event in 2015, including Major General Peter Williams, a former British commander of the mission to the Soviet forces in Germany. Halper's partner in the seminar, Cambridge professor Neil Kent, has also espoused better relations with Russia and Putin in his writings and told Russia Today in a 2014 interview that everyone is attacking and demonizing Russia. According to Kent's biography, he was a professor from 2002 to 2012 at Russia's St. Petersburg State Academic Institute. Even more interesting are reports from the British media outlet that the Financial Times that state Halper received funds for the Cambridge seminar from Russian billionaire Andrei Cheglakov, who has close ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Cheglakov also funded VeryuScript in 2016, which raised the suspicions of Dearlove and those connected to the seminar. VeryuScript, a publisher for a Russian academic journal, was suspected by MI6 being front for Russian intelligence. And in other words, he worked with these people, because this is a long article. I mean, who has the time? So Halper and George Papadopoulos, let's go to that. Halper was not only spying on Page for the FBI in 2016, but he had also made contact in September of 2016 with another Trump campaign volunteer, George Papadopoulos. He invited Papadopoulos to London that September, luring him with a $3,000 paycheck to work on the research paper under contract. By this time, the young Trump campaign volunteer had already been in contact with the London-based Professor Joseph Mifsud, who had basically informed him that the Russians had damaging material about Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. Mifsud's role has also come into question by Congress. You think? Because Mifsud was also in on this plan there. That's why he disappeared. Eventually, Papadopoulos was swept into the Robert Mueller special counsel, a setup on Papadopoulos. He was a young guy. He didn't know what the hell was going on there. He saw $3,000 and he figured, hey, I'll write the paper. So he was swept into the Mueller special counsel investigation and pled guilty to one count of lying to the FBI. His wife, Simona Papadopoulos, who's been a vocal advocate for her husband, told Sarah8Carter.com that essentially he was forced to plead guilty because of threats from Mueller's team and lack of financial resources. That's what Mueller does. That's how he plays. That's how he rolls, I should say. After testifying behind closed doors last month to the House Intelligence Committee, Simona told this outlet that she testified to Congress as far as George is concerned. He met with individuals following the same pattern of behavior, and all of a sudden Halper was asking if he was doing anything with the Russians. This is the case with Halper, who is now proven to be a spy, possibly with Australian Ambassador Alexander Downer, who her husband met with in London. Halper and Michael Flynn. Before Page and Papadopoulos, there was the former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Army Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who had been invited to Cambridge in February 2014 for a dinner hosted by both Dearlove and Halper. But during that time, Flynn was already walking a fine line with the Obama administration and battling President Obama and the CIA over his deep disagreement with the administration's narrative that Al-Qaeda and extremist groups had been defeated or were on the run. Several months later, Flynn was forced to resign early and ended his tenure as the director of the DIA. Flynn was pushed out by Obama. Of course, they don't want their information shown. Yeah, like in other words, you tell them that something's going on, that you're giving false information, they throw you out, that's all. Whoever speaks, it gets thrown out. Flynn was pushed out by Obama and then became a thorn in the side of Obama and the Clintons when he joined the Trump campaign, said a former senior intelligence source with knowledge of what happened, because he spilled all the beans to Trump. They didn't want that. The investigation into Trump didn't start with Carter Page or George Papadopoulos, but with Flynn. That's where it started. They were going to do this anyway, but that's where they started it. Flynn was already on the CIA and Clinton target list. Those same people sure as hell didn't want him in the White House, and they sure as hell didn't want Trump to win. Flynn's career with Trump ended as quickly as it came. He was forced to resign as Trump's national security advisor 27 days after taking the job. The highly classified conversation between Flynn and former Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak was leaked to the Washington Post, again through the FBI, in 2017, and he was later questioned by the FBI on the conversation. The FBI leaked the info, or the DOJ, whoever, and then they're questioning him. You get what I'm saying? A setup. According to former FBI Director Crooked James Comey, the agents who interviewed Flynn did not believe he was lying, but in the end, Flynn pled guilty to one count of lying to special counsel Mueller. He had already spent more than $1 million in lawyers' fees and sold his home to help with the debt. You see, Mueller tries to bankrupt you. That's what they're going to try to do to Trump. But I got news for them. All the tables are going to turn on these criminals. Halper's involvement in the Bureau's investigation started much earlier than the FBI's opening of the Crossfire Hurricane investigation into the Trump campaign on July 31st. Oh, you see that? That's a key date. The FBI and DOJ say it started on the investigation into Trump started on July 31st, 2016. But here it is. Halper's involvement in the Bureau's investigation started much earlier than the FBI's opening of its Crossfire investigation into the Trump campaign on that day. He was also providing information on Page, Papadopoulos, and Flynn earlier that year. See, that's what's going to destroy them. And it was in 2016 when Halper told the FBI that he witnessed concerning interactions between Russian academic Svetlana Lokava and Flynn at the February 2014 seminar dinner. This suspicion, without any proof, was then leaked to the papers in London and eventually discussed in the U.S. media. Lokova told the BBC in May of 2017 that when she first saw the allegations raised in the media, she thought it was a joke. Numerous sources with knowledge of the allegations Halper made about Flynn said that they were absolutely false and that Flynn and Lokova only spoke for a short time at the dinner. Several email exchanges between Lokova, Flynn, and his assistant that took place after the dinner were generic in nature, as Flynn had asked her for a copy of a historical 1930s postcard she had brought to the seminar. But it didn't matter that it wasn't the truth, said the former senior intelligence official. It was already out there because of Halper's allegations and the constant leaking and lying of false stories of those to the media. And they played the media to break stories that were false in order, and this was way before July 31st where they were investigating. The setup was taking place before, I bet you, even Trump won the election. How about that? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And again, thank you so much for watching.